The sound of breaking glass shattered the evening calm. Mike Reynolds froze, his grocery bags hanging heavy in his hands as he watched the scene unfold across the street. 3 young men surrounded a woman, their laughter cutting through the air like knives. What happened next would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone who witnessed it. If you've ever wondered whether one person can truly make a difference in this world, this story will show you how courage, when summoned in the darkest moments, can illuminate everything. Before we dive deeper into this incredible true story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of the humanity that connects us all. Mike Reynolds hadn't planned on being a hero that evening. At 42, his heroic aspirations had long ago been replaced by more practical concerns, making rent on time, keeping food in the refrigerator, and raising his 14-year-old daughter Emma on his own. 6 years had passed since cancer took his wife Sarah, leaving him to navigate the complicated world of single parenthood while nursing his own grief. That Thursday evening had been like any other. Mike had finished his shift at the auto repair shop where he worked, his hands still bearing traces of motor oil despite his thorough scrubbing. He'd stopped at Greenfield Market on his way home, mentally calculating how to stretch his paycheck to cover both groceries and Emma's upcoming school trip. The weight of responsibility was a constant companion, sitting heavily on his shoulders as he walked the 5 blocks toward the apartment they called home. The neighborhood had changed over the years. What was once a quiet, working-class area had seen better days. Storefronts that had housed family businesses for generations now stood empty, their windows covered with brown paper or plywood. The community was struggling, but it was still home. Mike knew every crack in the sidewalk, every corner store owner by name. This was his world, imperfect but familiar. He was just a block from home when he heard it, the sound of jeering voices and nervous laughter. Across the street, 3 young men had formed a semicircle around a woman at the bus stop. She couldn't have been more than 25, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. Even from a distance, Mike could see the fear in her posture, shoulders hunched, body angled toward escape, eyes darting for help that wasn't coming. "Come on, baby, we just want to talk," one of the men said, his voice carrying across the street. He was tall and lanky, wearing a baseball cap turned backward and a smirk that made Mike's stomach turn. "I said no," the woman replied, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "Please leave me alone." Another of the men, shorter but more muscular, stepped closer to her. "Don't be like that. We're just being friendly." The third man, silent until now, reached for her arm. "Nobody's around. Just come with us for a little while." The woman jerked away, backing into the bus shelter. Her movement knocked over a glass bottle someone had left on the bench. It shattered on the concrete, the sound like a starting pistol in Mike's mind. Time seemed to slow. Mike thought of Emma, his beautiful, fierce daughter who was just beginning to navigate a world that wasn't always kind to young women. He thought of Sarah, who had taught him that standing by was the same as standing with the wrong side. He thought of his mother, who had raised him to believe that character was defined by what you did when no one was watching. Except people were watching. An elderly couple had paused down the street, uncertainty on their faces. A teenager on a bicycle had stopped, phone in hand but making no move to help. A woman in a business suit stood frozen at the corner, keys clutched between her fingers like makeshift brass knuckles. Everyone was watching. No one was moving. Mike set his grocery bags down carefully on the sidewalk. The gallon of milk, the loaf of bread, the box of Emma's favorite cereal, they could wait. Some things couldn't. He crossed the street with purpose, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't a large man, years of working under car hoods had given him strength, but at 5'10", he didn't cut an imposing figure. He had no weapon, no backup, no plan beyond the certainty that he couldn't walk away. "Excuse me," Mike called out, his voice steadier than he felt. "The lady said she's not interested." The 3 men turned toward him, surprise registering on their faces before morphing into amusement. The tall one spoke first. Mind your own business, old man. This doesn't concern you. Mike stepped closer, positioning himself between the woman and her harassers. Actually, it does concern me. It concerns all of us. He gestured to the growing number of onlookers. We all live here. We all have to look out for each other. The muscular one laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Look at this guy, playing hero. What are you gonna do, fix our cars? Mike noticed the grease still embedded in his knuckles. 6 years of raising Emma alone had taught him that sometimes the strongest position was one of calm authority. I'm not looking for trouble, Mike said evenly. I'm just asking you to leave this woman alone and go on your way. And if we don't? The third man challenged, stepping forward. Mike felt a tremor of fear run through him, but he held his ground. Then we have a problem. The street had gone completely silent. Even the distant traffic seemed to have paused, as if the city itself was holding its breath. In that moment of tension, Mike became acutely aware of the woman behind him, her breathing quick and shallow. He could feel the eyes of every bystander, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The muscular young man made his move, shoving Mike hard in the chest. Mike stumbled backward but didn't fall. Years of balancing under car lifts had given him a solid center of gravity. As he regained his footing, something shifted in the air around them. An older man stepped forward from the crowd, then a young woman with a backpack. The teenager on the bicycle moved closer, still filming but now clearly aligned with Mike. One by one, people stepped forward, forming a loose semicircle behind Mike and the woman. No one said a word. They didn't have to. The message was clear: this ends now. The three harassers looked at each other, their bravado visibly deflating as they assessed the changing situation. The odds had shifted dramatically. Whatever, man, the tall one muttered, backing away. She wasn't even that cute anyway. The three slunk away, throwing insults over their shoulders that sounded hollow even to their own ears. The street remained silent until they turned the corner and disappeared from view. Only then did Mike turn to the woman. Are you okay? She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I didn't know what to do. The bus is late, and they just wouldn't leave me alone. Her name was Aisha Davis. She was 24, a nursing student who had just finished a late clinical rotation at the hospital 6 blocks away. She'd been waiting for the bus for 20 minutes when the men approached her. I can wait with you until the bus comes, Mike offered. We all can, said the elderly woman who had stepped forward. She introduced herself as Mrs. Gonzalez, a 30-year resident of the neighborhood. What happened next surprised everyone, most of all Mike. Instead of dispersing, the impromptu gathering of neighbors remained. Introductions were made. The teenager, whose name was Tyler, put away his phone and offered Aisha his water bottle. The businessman from the corner coffee shop brought out cups of hot tea for everyone. Mrs. Gonzalez produced homemade cookies from her shopping bag. In the span of 20 minutes, a bus stop had transformed into something resembling a community meeting. People who had lived as strangers despite sharing the same streets for years were suddenly exchanging phone numbers and stories. When Aisha's bus finally arrived, the entire group waved her off like old friends seeing a loved one depart on a journey. She promised to let them know when she got home safely, a promise she kept with a group text message that circulated among her new protectors. Mike retrieved his grocery bags from across the street, surprised to find them untouched. As he prepared to continue his walk home, several neighbors offered him rides, which he politely declined. The weight of the bags seemed lighter somehow, as if the burden of isolation had been heavier than any physical load. When he arrived home, Emma was at the kitchen table doing homework, her dark hair falling across her face in a way that reminded him painfully of Sarah. "You're late," she said without looking up. "I was about to order pizza." "Sorry, sweetheart. Something happened on the way home." As he unpacked the groceries, Mike told Emma about the incident at the bus stop. He expected her typical teenage eye roll at her father's old-fashioned notions of chivalry. Instead, she listened intently, her expression growing serious. "That was brave, Dad," she said when he finished. "Really brave?" Mike shook his head. "Not really. I was terrified." "That's what makes it brave," Emma replied with the simple wisdom of youth. "Doing it even though you're scared." Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Mike sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, replaying the events of the evening in his mind. He wondered what would have happened if he hadn't stopped. If he had just kept walking, groceries in hand, eyes averted like so many others had done before him. His phone buzzed with a text message from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Mrs. Gonzalez from the bus stop. Tyler helped me set up this group chat. We're organizing a neighborhood watch. First meeting Saturday at the community center. Will you come?" Before he could respond, more messages appeared. "This is Darius from the coffee shop. I'm bringing pastries. Tyler here. I can make flyers and post them around the neighborhood. Lisa from the bookstore. I can reserve the meeting room if the community center is booked." Mike stared at his phone, watching as a community reformed itself message by message. He thought about Emma growing up in this neighborhood, about Aisha waiting for her bus, about all the silent witnesses who had found their voices. He typed his reply, "I'll be there. And I'm bringing my daughter. She has some ideas about a buddy system for the bus stops." The story of Mike Reynolds and the bus stop incident might have ended there, a small moment of courage in a world that often seems short on heroes. But real stories rarely end so neatly. The neighborhood watch that formed that Saturday became a catalyst for change. What began as a response to one incident expanded into community cleanup days, a mentoring program at the local high school, and eventually, a successful campaign to improve lighting at bus stops throughout the district. Aisha completed her nursing degree and took a position at the local hospital. She started a program that provided safe transportation for healthcare workers working late shifts. Tyler's video of the incident, which he had never posted online out of respect for Aisha, became part of a community education program about bystander intervention. The 3 young men who had harassed Aisha were identified through the neighborhood network. Rather than pursuing criminal charges, the community offered them a different path: community service and participation in a restorative justice program. 2 of them accepted. The process wasn't easy or perfect, but it created space for accountability and growth that might not have existed otherwise. As for Mike, his small act of courage rippled outward in ways he could never have anticipated. 6 months after the incident, he was offered a partnership at the auto shop where he worked. A year later, he was dating again, a single mom he'd met through the neighborhood watch program who had a son Emma's age. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. The neighborhood still faced challenges. Mike still worried about making ends meet. Emma still struggled with the loss of her mother. But something fundamental had shifted. The isolation that had defined their lives for so long had been replaced by connection. On the anniversary of the bus stop incident, the neighborhood held a block party. Streets that had once fallen silent in the face of intimidation now rang with music and laughter. Children played in yards that had previously been empty. Neighbors who had once hurried past each other with averted eyes now greeted one another by name. During the celebration, Mrs. Gonzalez clinked a spoon against her glass to call for attention. The crowd quieted as she raised her glass toward Mike. "To courage," she said simply. "And to community." The gathered neighbors echoed her toast, their voices joining together in a chorus that filled the street. Mike stood with Emma at his side, her hand slipped into his just as it had when she was small. He thought about how a single moment of decision had transformed not just his life, but the life of an entire community. The street had gone silent once before, in a moment of fear and uncertainty. Now it was filled with the sounds of life and connection. And in that contrast lay the most important lesson of all: silence in the face of wrongdoing allows darkness to grow, but when we find our voices, when we stand together, we create something powerful enough to illuminate even the darkest corners of our world. As the celebration continued around him, Mike realized that heroism wasn't about grand gestures or extraordinary strength. It was about ordinary people making the choice to care, to act, to stand up when it would be easier to walk away. It was about remembering that we are all connected, all responsible for one another. In a world that often seems divided and disconnected, perhaps that is the most heroic act of all, to remember our shared humanity and to live as if it matters. Because it does. It always has.